Hey, thanks for checking out Window Shot. Today we are going to be interviewing a gentleman by the name of Max. Now, Max really impressed me when I first started working with him as an aspiring DP. But not only that, the fact that he was still so young in school was really inspiring, to say the least. So I wanted to bring him on the show today so that you can see what it's like to be in school and be as successful as he is so far as an aspiring DP. So check out our interview. Let's jump in. So thanks, Max, for joining us today. Can you tell us how old you are, what school program you're in, and what you're also doing in the film industry?
Yeah, so I'm 20 years old. I am currently studying at the University of Waterloo in the Global Business and Digital Arts program. I'm going into my fourth year this fall, and basically the program is just kind of a split degree between between business and visual arts, so you kind of get the mix of both worlds there. And on the side, well, if you could count on the side, it's more so my full-time thing. I do filmmaking, so I have my own production company where I DP, I direct, I get my own clients, but also with that, I do contract work, so I'll get hired out to be a first AC, second AC, grip, swing, kind of anything they're looking for. I'm there to help, along with editing.
Which is the exact right attitude to have to be able to make it in the industry. Now, when did you first start? Like, if you're 20, like, how far back are we going before this whole train of yours started?
Well, I guess you can say it started technically in grade 7 when I had a YouTube channel. I was doing YouTube for a couple of years, just making little videos, not taking it too seriously, but that's kind of what inspired me to get into it. And then I started actually taking it seriously and making money off of it probably when I was 15. That's when I started doing music videos, started out with being some friends, and then it kind of grew in the area, and from there it kind of just expanded into what it is now.
Now, you've had such great success so far, such earlier on in your career, and doing all the different jobs. And can you just share with us, like, how many different sets you've been on?
Yeah, it's hard to put an exact number on it, but just a ballpark number, I'd say probably around 250 like individual shoots.
For sure. Like, that's a lot of shoots. Like, how are you balancing that I guess school work balance slash life with that many shoots going on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with this industry is that work never really stops. So people who kind of have their traditional 9 to 5, as soon as they clock out, they clock out. Whereas for me, as soon as I clock out of school, I clock in to work. So whenever I'm not doing school, all my time and attention is focused on my film. That's also my passion, so that's what I want to be doing. It doesn't feel like a job.
Now, with that being said, how do you prioritize then going to class or finishing a project compared to, say, making sure I land that next project, or if I get a really cool project, how are you prioritizing between those?
Yeah, it started out to be pretty difficult because both my parents are teachers. So I definitely had a lot of pressure growing up to be good at school, and that should be my main focus. So at the start, when it wasn't where it is now, it was really staying up late, working way into the night because that's the only time I'd have. Nowadays, I was able to kind of get close with the professors, and they understand and they know what I do, and it all comes down to prioritizing what do I see of best fit for me and my interests. So nowadays, a lot of the time, if I have a shoot, I will prioritize the shoot over school, and then I'll make up that work afterwards if need be. But it all comes down to just time management. If you're in school, you're going to have to compromise on some things, whether it be sleep, whether it be sleeping in, whether it be hanging out with friends. It all comes down to just how much motivation and discipline are you willing to put into what you want to do, and that's where the results are going to come from.
There's always a sacrifice for something that you're passionate about.
Exactly.
What about, like, your parents, like them seeing you be working so much and doing school? I mean, I run into so many students that are like, my parents are forcing me or very much encouraging me to have to finish this. Like, how does that feel for you? Or do you even want to continue to finish this? Like, it sounds like you basically jump off and start working full time now if you really wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely tough for me coming from both parents, having been teachers and currently being teachers. They definitely see life as you go to school, you get your degree, go to university, and then you get a job after that 9 to 5 and call it a day. So I've definitely felt the pressure from them to stay in school. I've personally, if it was up to me, I would have dropped out probably a couple years ago. But they've pushed me to stay in, and honestly, I'm happy with it now that I've been able to stay in because I got 1 year left, and who knows how much benefit it will have down the road, but at least I will have that on the back burner, and I've been able to still kind of progress my own self along the way.
So then what are some of those hard lessons that you've kind of learned along the way, or even surprised you about the film industry as you were kind of getting into it?
Actually, I only started working on bigger productions last year. Up until then, it was just only my own shoots, so I got to do what I wanted. I was kind of ignorant on what the whole film world was like until I got involved with it, but it was definitely an eye-opener, and it taught me so much that it's more than just kind of pointing a camera and shooting. There's way more to it, and that's also the beauty of it.
Like, was there anything really hard that surprised you as well as you were going down, or even just the learning curve between doing camera, between doing audio, like everything yourself, like you're just learning the processes, the technology, and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've realized when I'm starting to work into the more bigger sets and more crew production is that although you can do everything yourself, maybe you shouldn't. Your time and money might be better spent on working on with a bigger crew because everyone has their own specialties.
So important.
Yeah, there's way too much to learn in this industry for one person. You could do it, probably not the best use of your time. So as I've seen more and more, I've actually started working and growing my connections within the industry, and that's also helped me grow because I'm not spending a week doing something that if I got a few people to help me out, it could only take a couple days. So.
Well, and even when we first started working together, like I think there was 3 or 4 different shoots there where you were taking on a different position every time, right? Like you were out there hustling and just trying out, and like you just said, like can do one thing, you can do it all, but you know, it's best to still learn and try these other areas of things. What kind of prompted you to want to get more into the camera side of things? Like that, it's a very popular thing for a lot of us with wanting to be as a DP or a camera operator. You're succeeding at it, but what drove you over all the other departments out there?
I think it was more so just being able to kind of create a look and tell a story yourself in through the camera, because I know, like, I've had experience on everything, like I've said, and I found that being the one behind the camera, knowing that you are in full control of how the image will turn out straight out of camera, that's something that was very appealing to me. And I started out in the music video scene, and that was very dependent, or at least when I was doing it, it was very dependent on your camera movements and your camera composition and all that sort of aspects, because at the time I didn't have the budget for lighting or visual effects, so I had to in camera get really good at that sort of thing. So that's kind of what initially motivated me to kind of pursue the DP and the camera operator route.
And that's so cool that you were able to focus in on that. Like you didn't rely on technology to do those things. Like you really honed in on those skills. And I mean, that's awesome. Like I don't think enough people really hone in on that type of thing. They might fall back on some of the other skills that they have to be able to do that. Now, at the time of this recording, there are a lot of people, unfortunately, out of work right now. A lot of people are struggling in the film industry. And here you are, that next generation up and coming and doing pretty well at yourself. How are you finding just so much work out there, and what kind of work are you really kind of doing or evolving into?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to what I said earlier, where it's you don't clock off from a 9 to 5 in this industry. You're basically working all the time, or you should be if you want to succeed. So you might not have a shoot to be doing, but there's always so many other things you can be doing with your time to help you grow and progress, whether it be getting active on social medias and the internet, just kind of progressing your online presence. It could be going back and critiquing your own work. It could be networking with others. It can be just cold calling, pitching new ideas to new clients.
See, it's working. I keep telling so many people, cold call, it's okay to do it. And he is a witness. It is working.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of cold calling experience. Not too much, actually. It's mostly been connections for me, But
sorry, is that cold calling, emailing, texting?
Yeah.
Like what is that, or all of the above?
It's kind of all the above. I'd say if you can, cold in person.
Oh.
I've found that's been the most successful to me.
Like you'll show up at like a production company in person and try and get a job with them?
Not so that. It's more so for my own clients. So if there's a local business or something, you walk into the store and you talk to the manager, just ask if you want to go grab coffee, and then maybe discuss how you can work together and stuff like that. I'm sure it could also work with production companies. When I first started, it was more so my route was emailing and trying to see how I could have a connection with them to get in. So it's like, oh, wait, you know this person who knows that person? Let me use that to my advantage to make us friends. And then who knows, from there it can progress into something better. But there's tons of ways to do it. And like I said earlier, it just comes down to how much are you willing to put in, and that's how much you're going to get out.
Right? Right? I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. Now, how many of the jobs or have you done are freebies that you've had to do to be able to get you to where you're at? Or even how have you been able to set your rate?
Yeah, so I started out doing a fair amount of freebies. I think it's kind of part of the process to grow your portfolio and just get experience under your belt, so that way you're ready to tackle the more intense kind of sort of gigs. But nowadays, I think I realized that there's always ways to make money off things, whether it be if you initially pitch it for free, you can always kind of not upcharge, but like add on features that they might then be more lenient with and accustomed to.
Like, what would that look like? What would something be?
Well, it could be as simple as, oh, I'll do the first one for free, knowing that we're going to do a second one that's paid, or break up the project so you can see, because a lot of the times they might not be willing. You might have to do it for free because they don't trust your work or they don't know you, and so that could be a good way to kind of get your foot in the door and establish a connection so they know what you're capable of, and then be willing to charge. It could also be something as simple as, I'm willing to do the shoot for free, but then you can pitch on, like, I can also say it's commercial. I'll make you the commercial for free, but then I can cut together little social media content out of it for a price.
Interesting.
So there's always ways to make money off free stuff if you're willing to kind of do a little bit of negotiating and stuff.
Now, would you also give your gear as well for free on these freebies, or is this kind of just your time?
It would be my gear too at times. Obviously, definitely the time that I put in. That's kind of a given. If it's something that I really want or an opportunity that I think would be really good for my portfolio, I'll just send it. I'll lose money if need be, because I know it down the road it is beneficial for my future and my career. So you got to spend money to make money sometimes. You got to put that work in at the start that you're not going to want to put in, but
there's definitely a line too when doing freebies where it's like, somebody's trying to take advantage of you, somebody's trying to use you, right? And it's like, as long as it's for your gain, or if there's like a general help, then okay, like go for it. But if it's like after a while you're just like, I'm not learning anything, I'm really not contributing to my career, why am I doing this? No, I'm good. You gotta stop that.
Yeah, there's always the traditional, oh, I'll pay you with exposure, and I know we all hate that. Honestly, sure, I might be missing out on a cool opportunity, but my time and energy is better spent on something else. And if you want me to go along with that, you need to charge a rate.
How do you come up with your rate for your gear project for independently, but then also maybe when you get hired as, say, like a second AC or a first AC for something else, how do you come up with those?
Yeah, independently, it's very case-by-case driven. It depends on the scope of the project. You can have a really big commercial, for example, that you need to hire out a lot, or you need to rent out a lot of gear. You need to hire out a big crew. You need to rent a studio. There's a lot of pre-production and post-production put into it. So obviously that you got to take into account how much time and how much money you will be putting into it, and you got to balance it off that. It also, one of the bigger ones that is heavily overlooked a lot of the times is what is the client, or what are they going to get out of it? If this video product is going to be of crucial value to the company and they're going to make a lot of money off of this video, you shouldn't be just getting $100 for the video. It's worth a lot to them, so it's going to cost them, or it should cost them, or you can justify it costing them a little bit more money. And then contract work, there is kind of your industry standard rate that initially you'll probably stick with, but then along.
How did you find out what the local industry rate is?
Honestly, it was just cold calling and reaching out to local production companies, and I was at the time willing to just step in the door and take whatever, just because I wanted that experience. And then from there, kind of start to scope it out and be like, okay, these people are charging or are willing to pay me this, these people are willing to pay me that. And then from there, you get closer and you can talk with people and be, what is actually the industry rate? And then after that, you kind of, the more you get to know and work with the production companies, and the more you grow as in value yourself, you can start to negotiate your price and up it a little bit.
So then if you had a client that say came to you and was like, I don't know how much any of this stuff costs, right? They want to do a social media video, they want to do an in-house corporate video type of like thing. How would you go about ballparking or putting a quote together for them when they don't come to you with, say, a budget? You're kind of freaked out that you might come in over budget, but you also don't want to undersell yourself. Like,
Yeah, there's a few different tactics you can use. One of them being you can give them price options, levels to the project. You can say, oh, if you want this, it'll cost you this. But if that might be too much, there's an alternative that's going to cost you this much, but you're only going to get this much out of it. So you kind of give them some breathing room to work with, or you can go straight to the point, being and explaining step by step what everything, like laying it all out in front of them, which I personally don't like to do because then you kind of reveal your profit. But I generally like to kind of first give them the scary price and then work with them from there, and how can I be of best fit to you, and how can we work together from here on out.
now, when you come across a project that, say, you're uncomfortable with as far as, say, size goes, right, where they're asking a great deal more than what you're capable is comfortable of, maybe out of your price range, but you're like, no, I still want this type of thing. Like, do you have people that you would call upon? Would you walk away from the project? How would you kind of handle a situation like that?
Well, initially, I would first go to them and be, hey, this is a lot more. Maybe I wasn't expecting this. Maybe we need to kind of adjust the price and the rate. But if that's not an option, thankfully, I've kind of established a good local connection of guys who are similar in age and kind of position as me in our career, where we help each other out on a lot of things. It's like if he needs something for free or for really cheap, I'll just help him out, and he'll do the same with me. We help each other out. We'll help grow together, because at the end of the day, it is a competition, but it's really not. You're here to help. Everyone's growing together. You're not gonna.
But for a lot of people that would just want to either try and do it by themselves, do it all on their own to be able to get the check, right? Like you're saying, no, like network, build, grow together, get on out there, and don't try and do it all and then fail.
Well, I mean, that if you have that as an option, definitely. I will say, though, there's been tons of cases where I've gone into a project being, I don't know if I can do this. For example, one of my most recent commercials, I had to do visual effects work. I didn't know if I could do that visual effects. I just was like, I think I can. So in those moments, it will really test you, and it'll prove to yourself, oh, I actually can do this, and it'll show you that you're better than you thought. So it'll push you in those moments, and that's kind of what's needed sometimes. So in that case, you might need to just step up to the plate and do your best, put your best foot forward, and see kind of where it takes you.
Now, film gear, whether it's camera, grip, lighting, studios, all this stuff is really expensive. What is your take on going down the rabbit hole of literally just buying everything and spending boatloads of money, especially somebody in school, compared to, say, renting or using other people's stuff? Like, where do you find that balance between rent to buy, or do you even rent, or do you even buy?
Yeah, I think when you're first starting out, I'd get yourself a kit, is what I call it. You got to get yourself a decent camera and a decent lens and some decent lights. It's not going to cost you too much. Yeah, you're going to have to fork it out of pocket, but once you have that, you're able to kind of tackle the majority of projects you need to. If you need more for a certain project, odds are you can charge them for the rate of rental. A good way that I took advantage of when starting out is, this was when I was shooting my music videos at the start. If I needed a certain piece of gear for the project, I would incorporate that into my cost. So say, for example, I needed I needed a fisheye lens for this project, and it's going to cost me $400. I'll tell the artist, hey, to get the look that we want to get, it's going to cost more, and then they're going to hopefully be willing to pay that, and you can fund your lens with that project.
Smart.
Or you can just be more kind of sturdy on yourself and save up, not all the money, but having the back of your mind be like, okay, I could take the weekend off, or I could do a shoot for a couple $100 and then boom, that's my lens. So it's all a mindset thing on that side of things. And then when you get progressed to kind of being bigger, it then comes down to more so of the rentals. I find myself kind of entering that sort of territory where all the cheaper sort of gigs that I get, I have enough gear, I have my own gear, it's good enough. I'll do that with my stuff and I won't have to charge or have to pay for rentals, and that'll allow me to profit more. But for the bigger scale clients and the bigger projects, I'm gonna want to go ahead and rent gear to give them the best quality I can, and that also reflects on my image as a filmmaker. So it's kind of a mix on where you're at in your career.
Mm-hmm. So then what's your take, or how do you learn about new gear or try new gear? How do you get on out there and try or learn new stuff?
I'm super blessed to be able to go on a lot of sets where they are buying the gear and I just get to be like, wow, let me see how this works. So that's a good way for me to kind of become accustomed to and see the new gear and test it out. Before that, obviously you can just go on YouTube and watch your tutorials, do your research yourself, and then I'm sure there's rental shops in town, or there's places where you can maybe get your hands on, whether it be a connection, who they have it. Hey, can I swing by for 10 minutes and just check it out? I've always wanted to see how it works and what it is. So there's ways on that. But honestly, you kind of get to a point where you don't really need the new gear. You're happy with your own kit, and your money and time is better spent on other things rather than upgrading to the latest and greatest camera, because that might not be the best use of your money.
That's so sound advice, because so many of us get in that, oh, there's the newest camera. I need to have that camera to be able to get that next type of job, because that job only wants to be on with that type of camera. Like there might be a case for that, but you're saying like that might not be what a lot of us might fear out there.
Yeah, no, it's what you do with it that works. That'll turn out the best. So sure, I'm sure everyone always would want the best camera out there, but at the end of the day, I forget the exact quote. The best camera is the camera in your hand. So use what you got. If you can afford it and it makes sense to you, go ahead, or rent it at least. But honestly, it's very hard to tell the difference in cameras nowadays. So depending on the client and the scope of your project, use what you can.
How important is it for you to have your own car and a license in this industry?
It's pretty important. If you're willing, a lot of the shoots that I do, I'm moving around for. You got to be willing to travel. You got to drive distances. You got to put yourself out there, literally, because you might, depending on where you live, you might be in a city where there's a lot of opportunities, or you might be in a small city where there's not too much and you got to go travel. So having that ability to have a car not only allows you to do more work outside of things, but it also allows you to gain your network and connections outside of things. You can go to networking events out of town. You can access more studios and locations that may be of more interesting outside of town.
Do you think that it's still possible, though, if say you don't have a license for any reason or just can't afford a car, that like that's an absolute game changer? Or like, is there any hope for us that might not able to have access to that, at least not for like the near future?
Yeah, no, you can totally make it work without a car. I started at 15. You're not even allowed to have a license at 15. And all of my music videos, I'd take the bus downtown and we just run and gun along the streets uptown. So there's totally ways to do it. There's public transit, or I grew up biking. That used to be my thing. So I'd just bike around the town, and I would along the way find spots, and I'd note them in my Google Maps and stuff and write them down, I want to shoot a video right there. So you don't need one. You work with what you got at the end of the day.
What kind of advice do you have for people either looking at moving into the industry from, say, a whole other industry, or somebody that's looking at going to film school from high school, or even somebody that's finishing school and moving in? What advice do you have them to succeed and do well in this industry?
It all comes down to how much you're willing to put in. So it's a very heavily it's an industry that's very heavily focused on you going out there yourself and finding your own work. So you can't just sit around and expect stuff to come to you. When you're starting out film school, for example, it's a good path to go down if you're not fully sure, or if you don't have that kind of full force motivation to go into it. But once you're out in the real world, or if you don't go to film school, you got to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to work that 12 to 12, not 9 to 5. You got to be always wanting to progress, always pushing harder and harder to get yourself out there, get more clients, learn more skills along the way, and just enjoy it. Like, it's a great industry to be in. You can make so much amazing stuff, meet amazing people, see the world, travel, and get paid to do it. There's so many upsides to it. It's just, at the end of the day, it's work. You got to put it in. It's a job.
I couldn't agree more. The rewards are so there, but you gotta shoot for it. You gotta go for it. What does that look like for you, as you just said about the hours? Like, you're doing school, you're going home and you're working. Like, what's your average like time you call it quits at the end of the day during the week with everything that you kind of have going? Like, are you 1, 2 o'clock in the morning type of individual? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it fluctuates heavily. During school hours, normally I'll be up pretty late, because school will wrap up maybe late afternoon, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then I gotta go home and sit right down on the computer, start editing, or I'll get a shoot, and then I'll have to make up all of my work, my school work, or just anything else I had to do the next day. So you put in a lot of hours, but I will say I feel like I do procrastinate a little bit, and my time and my focus could be more focused a lot of the time. So if you are really good at managing your time and you can really lock in, work how you work, really. I used to work the best in the mornings, so I'd wake up super early and get my work done before lunch, and then I can kind of catch up on other things. But nowadays I work better in the evening, so work with that. Okay, sure, I can stay up later and sleep in longer, because that's when my time is most efficient.
Cool. So then what's a fun story that you can share with us about being on set? Either something exciting you've seen, some cool place you've gone, or just something really neat that you can kind of share with us.
Okay, so this one happened actually like about a month ago. I was on a shoot for the Steel Timber Sports. We're shooting a little series for TSN out in Nova Scotia, and we were shooting on a cow farm, and I was a gimbal operator, and this is middle of the summer, heat. I had to go follow a tractor into the tall grass to go film the cows. At the time, I didn't think of anything of it. I just went for it. And I got out of the grass, and I probably had 20 ticks on me, just crawling everywhere. They're deer ticks too, so they're the worst. I was not okay. I was like, they are literally everywhere crawling. I thought I had them all off, and then one would like crawl around, and it was just bad. And then you got in the car and you thought you had them off, and then other guys had them, so the car would be infested. And that was probably it's not the most fun experience working on film, but it's a crazy experience.
But that's up there for sure. Like,
yeah,
that's pretty good. Like,
yeah,
it's just like, but it just goes back to being like, when you start your day on set, you have no idea how it's gonna end. Like, you have certain ideas of like how the day is gonna progress and roll, but you're just like you just said, you just went for the shot, you went for it, you didn't know if you're actually gonna do it or not, and these were just some of the there we go. You got a story out of it.
Yeah. It takes you some crazy places, and you'll make so many memories out of it, like this one.
Nice. So, Max, thank you so very much for joining us today. Thank you as well for watching. I really hope you were inspired and learned a few things about being in school, and just seeing that it is possible for you to be in school and thriving and doing well. Now, today's sponsor is Tiny Horse Film Studios here in Waterloo. We give them a big shout out for all of your local film studio needs. Check them out for the next film project that you're working on. Until then, keep filming.